how they had the rules and the laws stacked to where there wasn't going to be competition, and that's one of the reasons that you had all of this special interest, trying to preserve this little, this little nugget that Preferred Family Healthcare was getting. I mean, that's the Arkansas news. I don't know if you saw the article. The headline: nonprofit cashed in using Arkansas Program for Mental Services. You're going to want to check that out. We're going to try to get to it sometime today, but we do have a full show with, we got 3 guests on today as well. I'll tell you about those coming up here in 10 seconds.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing out there on this Wednesday, December 5th? Merry Christmas to everybody out there. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. And we want you to be a part of that program. One of the ways you can do it is to go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/Conduit News, or the YouTube page, Conduit News. You want to subscribe and click the little bell to receive notifications as well. You can contribute to the program that way, or you can send us a text or give us a phone call, 870-275-9799. We do have a jam-packed show for you today. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be checking in with the Patriots of Act 746's Dan Borum will be back with us. Always great to talk to him. At the top of the next hour, we've got Professor Jason Norsworthy coming on the program. Now, Professor Norsworthy works for the University of Arkansas in the agricultural department. He's done a lot of research on a chemical that you may have heard of. Maybe you haven't. It's called dicamba. I have actually, interviewed people who are critical of the use of dicamba, and I have haven't really interviewed anybody that's for the use of it, but that's gonna change. At least I'm told that's going to change. I've actually successfully, indirectly made contact with some farmers, or a farmer at least, who is an advocate of it, and so I want to get their side of the story. I want to know, I want to know about this issue. This is a big issue because agriculture is the largest industry here in the state of Arkansas, and so when it comes to how we grow the products that we need to sell, it's a big deal. So we're gonna talk about this, and but we're gonna specifically today, though, we're gonna talk with Professor Norsworthy about his research on the chemical itself. What it is. I mean, there's a lot of, we're not farmers. I don't know. I mean, when I was talking to the other farmers, who were opposed to it a couple weeks ago, I don't, the difference between drift and volatility and all this other stuff. I mean, I'm not a farmer, so I don't really know what that is, or the differences between the two, that sort of thing. But we'll explore all of that. Coming up at the top of the next hour. Then, 7:33, we will be talking with Rabbi Ari Spiro again, because you have this Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She has compared the caravan south of the border, which, by the way, the media said didn't exist a couple of weeks ago. They were making fun of people who were worried about it. You remember that? Anyway, she's saying that it's like the Holocaust. Anyway, we'll see what Rabbi Ari Spiro has to say about that. In the meantime, I want to talk again about what I talked about on Monday. Monday, we were talking about the French, how they have been protesting since November the 17th, how these protests have turned, violent. There's people that have been hurt. There's cars that have been burned. There's a lot of infrastructure that's been damaged. Well, turns out that Emmanuel Macron decided to relent and decided to blink, and he decided to cancel the gas tax increase. So this is from the South China Morning Post. Their headline on the South China Morning Post is this: Emmanuel Macron caves in to French yellow vest protesters. But then it says it's too late because they want him out. Macron became the latest world leader to suffer at home for trying to impose green taxes. President's first major policy U-turn may not quell weeks of protest. Now, we're going to come back to this article because it's fascinating to me. A lot of it is. But if you go over to the Breitbart article, their headline, "Not Enough, Yellow Vests to Reject Temporary Suspension of Fuel Tax Rises in France." Representatives from the Yellow Vest movement have said that a temporary suspension of a further tax increase by the government does not go far enough, maintaining the taxes should be cut altogether. Now, let's just stop here for a second and let's ask a question. The media is telling you, if they'll tell you at all, if they tell you at all about what's going on in France, they will say it's because of a gas tax. And if you read a little further into that, you realize that it's about the climate change, and you have, again, the Paris Climate Accords, which I mentioned yesterday. I mean, they're real serious about this. There's a reason that the Paris Climate Accords happened in Paris. It's because the leaders and the elites in Paris, they really, really think that they can control the weather. Let me say that again. That's what this is about. People who want to do something about man-made climate change. If you really boil it down, they are claiming that if we make a list and we do these certain things, we can control the weather. That we can, you and I, as a society, collectively, that we can control the weather. When you put it like that, it sounds crazy because it is. Okay? Now, so it's all going on in Paris. And if you hear about it all, it's about the fuel tax. Here's the question, though. If it's not just about the fuel tax, and it's about generally the government of France, which has an economy that's produced an economy on the people that is economically stagnant. Some of these articles talk about, social injustice, a stagnant economy, and these, and they do mention this climate change and everything else and the taxes that are going along with it. I guess the question is this. Donald Trump said he's not a globalist. Donald Trump says he's a nationalist. Donald Trump says that just means he wants to make sure that his country gets a good deal, is okay trying to help other countries when we can, but he's not going to do that at the expense of our country and the well-being of our citizens. And he calls that nationalism. Of course, then the media says, don't you mean white nationalism, sir? Because the media have an agenda and they want to divide America. If it's not just about the fuel tax in France, what is it about then? And I promise you, for example, if these protests in France that have been going on since the 17th of November, if they were really about nationalism and they were anti-globalism, the media would never, ever, ever tell you that this phenomenon here in America has, in a way, maybe it starts with Brexit, then the election of Donald Trump, and then, think about it. our economy right now, and I know everybody is saying, no, there's a recession coming, everything else. Maybe there is. I don't know. I definitely know if there is, they'll blame Trump. They certainly aren't going to blame him for the good economy right now. But the president is, say what you want to, our economy is doing good, relatively speaking. And France is on fire right now. Huh. Imagine that. Now and Donald Trump is handling this brilliantly, by the way, because he actually went out there and he tweeted. Let me see the president's tweet, Joe. If you go to the president's Twitter here, zoom in here. I don't have this on my screen. Okay, here we go. He's talking about China there. Okay, so right there. Stop. I'm glad that my friend, man, he is trolling him so bad right now. Donald Trump tweeting, I'm glad that my friend Emmanuel Macron and the protesters in Paris have agreed with the conclusion I reached 2 years ago. The Paris Agreement is fatally flawed because it raises the price of energy for responsible countries while whitewashing some of the worst polluters in the world. Scrolling up, I want Joe, if you can scroll up there. In a world, I want clean air and clean water and have been making great strides in improving America's environment. But American taxpayers and American workers shouldn't pay to clean up other countries' pollution. Okay, this has sent the mainstream media into an absolute meltdown. And I will refer you to, was it Victor Davis Hanson? We were interviewing Victor Davis Hanson, where I think it was he that was saying, Trump has the ability to, or maybe it might have been someone else it might have been another interview that I was listening to. But regardless, Trump has the ability to say what is true. And he gets right down to, he states the obvious that the elites don't want the general public to know, and then everybody piles on to him for doing it. But that's exactly what he's doing here. He's connecting an issue that the general public is supposed to have forgotten about. You're supposed to have forgotten. Yes, we know this is about a gas tax and climate change, but don't connect that to don't do the obvious. Don't do the obvious and connect it to the Paris Climate Accords. Don't do that, and President does it. And the media, they have a conniption. Let's see here. We have a Vox story about it. Where's this? Trump makes a U-turn. Let me see this one. Emmanuel Macron. Here's this one. The Vox story, Trump's retweet about the protests in France is wildly inaccurate. So somebody tweeted out that there are chants in the streets of France about we want Trump, and Trump retweeted it because, of course, that's what's going to happen. And now the media is saying, can you believe he did that? He retweeted a false claim. They're not talking about Trump. Even Russia Today, the headline here, Trump hijacks yellow vest protest to praise himself for ditching Paris climate deal. I mean, number one, he's stating the obvious, but number two, he knows the media cannot stand it when he actually connects the dots that they don't want you to connect. Here's an example. President Donald Trump's approval rating in America is what? 50%? 49%? Let's say high 40s, okay? Emmanuel Macron is in the 20s, and yet the media would have you believe that Emmanuel Macron is the leader of the free world. He is the darling of the globalist media. He is, remember, did you see the headlines where Emmanuel Macron talking to the Saudi prince and, you never listen to me and blah, 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 blah. And yet his own country is on fire. His own country is on fire. I mean, we hear all the time about Donald Trump's approval rating may not be where it needs to be at this point in his presidency. This guy has 20% approval. He's in the 20s. And yet we're told by our own media that, Emmanuel Macron, he's credible. He's reasonable. And all of these people that talk about democracy, they disdain the idea of an actual a democratic, consensus. They disdain the idea because they know better how to live our lives than we can live them ourselves. That's their mentality here, and that's what's being rejected. That's what was rejected with Brexit. Guess what? The elites over in Britain, no. You really didn't mean that when you voted the way you did, and so we'll basically call it Brexit, but we're really changing the. We'll still call it Brexit, but it's not Brexit. Let me tell you something. In many regards, this yellow vest movement is also spreading to other countries in Europe, and it's going to continue to be a media blackout on this in a lot of respects. But, the fact that Emmanuel Macron here has now said, okay, fine, no gas tax, that's a big deal. On all levels of government, when people get their power by asking for other people's vote, what that essentially means is the only thing they really fear is losing power. The only thing that really scares them is losing power. But even if they lose power, we see where, you just get a government job or you go work for a lobbyist somewhere. Here, Thomas Reuters, over at Reuters, Macron's popularity hits new low amid French protests, according to a poll. 23%. 23%. That was last week. I wonder what it is this week. And again, the question on my mind is it really all about the fuel tax, or is it about their whole country? And I think it's about their whole country. And if you want to know what the elites of this country want America to look like, the economic environment in America, the high tax structure in America, the Bernie Sanders utopia, look at France, and that is what they want for us here. That is more clear to me now than ever before. Anyway, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and reset. 870-275-9799. Back in a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. We got on the line for us Mr. Joey McCutcheon is with us. He's a Fort Smith attorney. He is a Freedom of Information Act law expert and advocate. Joey, welcome back, sir. Joey, do we have Joey? Have we lost Joey? It sounds like we haven't lost him, but I don't know. Is he here? Well, let's see if we can't get Joey back on the line. How about that? So, when we're gonna get Joey back on as soon as we can. The reason we want to have him on, though, is because Joey is recently filed suit against Preferred Family Healthcare. Preferred Family Healthcare is the company out of Missouri. Okay. We have Joey back with us. Joey, how are you, sir?
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts,
I'm doing good.
bloggers just
Good morning
looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst. How are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, Loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Tim on Facebook writing, climate change is real, man-made, climate change is a hoax. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, climate changes all the time. It always has. And, yeah, I was just talking to somebody, in Arkansas especially, I was just talking to somebody about, the climate in Arkansas changes 4 times a year. Can you believe that? Speaking of what you can see in Arkansas, on my way to work this morning, I was driving in a neighborhood, and I was looking at Christmas lights, and I saw I saw a reindeer. So I saw one reindeer that was lit up, one of those wire reindeer that you put lights on. And then the second reindeer was strung up in a tree from his, hanging by his back legs. And then there were red Christmas lights, like he had been field dressed. And I was like, okay, this is certainly a state that likes to deer hunt. It was quite the morbid scene. I'm gonna be honest. I did a double take. I was like, what? At first I thought somebody had played a prank, and maybe they have. I don't know, but it looked very intentional, very well done in terms of execution of visually what they were trying to accomplish. Anyway, the phone number 870-275-9799. I want to refer you guys to this story over at conduitnews.com. The headline here is Scare Tactics, Don't Be Kansas. It's a very good story. You need to watch. This is, a lot of politics is anticipating what arguments are going to be, whether or not those arguments make sense. And, if you look at what happened in Kansas, and I heard this 2 years ago, we can't cut taxes in Arkansas because of what happened in Kansas, meaning that they cut taxes and honestly, they didn't cut spending up there. And see, that's the thing. If you cut taxes to a degree and actually force your politicians to cut spending, or you put them in a position to where they must cut spending as well, I don't think they want to do those things. You know what I mean? That's the tough business of governing. That's the kind of, when you have to govern in a way to where you were to actually cut taxes and reduce revenue to government, and then find a way to cut what you're spending right now, like with existing spending. That's not exactly the kind of governing that politicians want because it's harder. And it's much easier to do the other thing, the red rhetoric, the blue results, or the red rhetoric and mediocre results, or the red rhetoric and revenue neutral results. It is much easier to do that with the hopes of positioning yourself for a future run for higher political office than to actually reduce the revenue going to the government, give the people tax relief, and then force the government to make cuts where the cuts need to be made. That's a much harder thing to do, but isn't it the main reason we send those guys down there in the first place, to do the hard things? We'll be right back with Mr. Dan Borum. Don't go anywhere. Tell us,
Morning.
We got a few stories to get to, a few updates. You filed suit against Preferred Family Healthcare, right? Tell us what that's about.
Right, yeah, it's about an illegal exaction suit, which basically what we're trying to do is get back all these public funds that were generated from tax dollars that were misapplied and illegally spent by Preferred Family Healthcare.
So this has to do with, this is the Missouri company that was supported extensively by, Arkansas taxpayer dollars, federal taxpayer dollars. They are at the center in a lot of ways of the entire scandal. Some people refer to it as a Medicaid mafia. Their ties just go deep into Arkansas politicians. Basically, they have been bribing Arkansas politicians, and those politicians looks like they've been passing bills on their behalf. And so you're saying that money needs to be, because of the nefarious criminal activity around it, that money needs to be returned?
Absolutely. That's what we're saying. It's just a total misuse of funds. And it's Arkansas dollars also, as we both know. Federal dollars are Arkansas dollars also, but clearly this involved Arkansas taxpayer money that was used to pay bribes, World Series tickets, lake houses in Carroll County, chartered flights for vacations, beach homes, and everything else under the sun. And we'll be doing some discovery to find out more and more.
They certainly can't be a fan of yours in this instance. And we've had some pleas come out from executives, people who were on the executive team in Preferred Family Healthcare, that they've made some pleas, and I think there's going to be a lot more information coming out about who knew what, when did they know it. Obviously, you've got the plea of Milton Rusty Cranford, who is also at the apex of this. He is the guy that really had his hands in everything. And he's also the guy that, according to the government, tried to have the New Jersey witness murdered by murder for hire plot. I keep telling people that because you would think that would make the news every time they mention this whole scandal, but the mainstream media, Joey, doesn't seem to be concerned in letting people know just how bad this has gotten.
Yeah, it was definitely a well-oiled scheme from Rusty Cranford on down. They hire folks that are not.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. As always, I want to remind you guys about the Patriots Fact 746. Their goal is to educate the citizens of Arkansas about not only your Second Amendment rights, but your Arkansas rights according to the Arkansas Constitution and Arkansas statute. They are advocates of constitutional carry and telling everybody that it is the law of the land. It's not just that they're advocates. They're telling people that it is the truth, and that is right now you can carry a gun here in Arkansas, open or concealed, without a permit. And it's incredible. They've been saying for 5 years. It's now been affirmed in a court decision. It's been affirmed by prosecutors and police departments, dropping charges when they wrongfully arrest people because the law enforcement doesn't know what the law is. Well, some of them do, but some of them don't. And so if you want to find out more about this great organization and the work that they're doing, then you can go to Facebook.com and search for Patriots of Act 746. Act 746 was the law back in 2013 that was passed that decriminalized the possession of a firearm or any weapon on your person, on or about your person. And so look that statute up if you want, but if you want more information, go to Facebook.com and search for them. Welcome back to the program. We got Mr. Dan Borum is with us with the Patriots of Act 746. Dan, it's always great to have you on, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Paul Harrell. How are you this morning?
I am doing well. How are you doing? Is everything getting festive in your neck of the woods, getting ready for Christmas?
It's getting Christmas time. It's slipping up on us very quickly, and really so Merry Christmas to you and all of the people in Conduit News.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. I want to have you on and talk just a little bit about something that we kind of talked about with Chris Ann Hall last week was the idea of the amount of laws that are on the books. I've heard it said before that in an average day, the average American breaks laws every day. I mean, I don't know how many, but they don't even know they're doing it.
Exactly.
It just, if somebody wanted to enforce some law somewhere, they could, and they could they could really harass somebody with it. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you 100%, Paul. That more than likely, just look at the folks in Arkansas with the state laws that we have that are on the books. We all, just about every one of us, if we get in a vehicle and take off anywhere, we have probably broke a law in some form or fashion. Just think about those who do carry a weapon in their vehicle, and they are on the highway, yet they drive by a school, but the highway is fairly close to the school, and more than likely we break laws every day just in that fashion. But I was doing some research and looking through the weapons generally in Arkansas under Arkansas Code Title 5, Chapter 73, and just to begin with, in this particular document, there are 2 pages of definitions that you have to read, and that you have to try to grasp an understanding of just the definitions themselves. And then in just the weapons generally, there are 33 different laws that go along with weapons generally. Now, that does not include the Arkansas concealed handgun carry licensing that's going through the Arkansas State Police. And I know within that there are 12 pages in the Arkansas CHCL, and then for the Arkansas enhanced carry, there's another 25 pages on the one that they came back and put some finishing touches to. They reduced it down to 25 pages. Deadly force laws. There are actually, under deadly force laws, you go through 52601 through 52621. And then you have your 573-120, which is your laws in Arkansas for carrying a knife. And so there is no doubt that we break a law just about every day under one of these laws that they have, and some of these laws are redundant. Mm-hmm. They repeat themselves, and so when we look at our God-given inalienable rights, which is it is not a right given to us by government, nor really a right given to us by the Constitution. It is a right given to us by our Creator to be able to protect ourselves, to defend ourselves. And the Constitution is supposed to protect the right that we already have. But yet we see that we're living in a generation of not necessarily uneducated people, but people who have been educated incorrectly.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that we have. We now have a society that's coming up. I mean, look at the masses that we're following after Bernie Sanders. What we have coming out of our public schools are little socialists that go right into the universities with socialist professors,
yeah.
and then they're lost for good. If we don't rein it in and start teaching at home, we're going to lose this thing completely, Paul.
Well, that certainly is the danger. I think there are a lot of people that go to college and then they become taxpayers and then they realize, hey, this is ridiculous. But you're right. With Bernie Sanders and then that girl Ocasio-Cortez. Yeah, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It is, discouraging, especially when there really doesn't appear to be any core principles sometimes with the newer generation to where you can predict how they would react to a new situation. It seems like it's an ever-evolving process. They can change with the norms. In terms of how many laws that we have, Dan, I saw this. Our friend Gary on Facebook just posted this from James Madison, who wrote this: "It will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice if the laws be so voluminous that they cannot be read, or so incoherent that they cannot be understood. If they be repealed or revised before they are promulgated, or undergo such incessant changes that no man who knows what the law is today can guess what it will be tomorrow." I mean, that sums up in a lot of ways where we are right now.
Our forefathers gave us the warnings. They gave us the tools. They gave us the warnings, but we did not heed them. We did not pay attention. And I say we because I believe with all of my heart and soul that we are all at fault in this, because for so many years we have stuck our head in the sand and pretend that these things weren't going to happen to us, or it could not happen to us, instead of paying attention. Now, I'm very thankful that we have people waking up. It's never too late to wake up, and it's never too late to rein this thing back in. But the only way we're going to do that is through correct education. Now, I have to say I was really encouraged last night. I went to a town hall meeting in Ozark, Arkansas with Senator Stubblefield, and I tell you what, I just love the man. He is just he's a fighter. He's very conservative. He is a fighter for that which is right. He stands for that which is right. He's not afraid to back down. He's a man who is very willing to stand alone if he has to. And I'm just very impressed with the man, and he talked to us about these things last night. And speaking of the education, he said I would dare you, or I would challenge you rather, to take a college student today and just ask them to give you the definition of inalienable, and ask them if they can tell you what does that mean. He said, I would guarantee you almost 90% couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
And see, that's the problem. Now, let me say this also concerning education. I was very encouraged to see Miss Jennifer Gifford Helms there last night from Russellville. She is also a great fighter for our education system in Arkansas in conservative education. And she really gave a big shout-out last night for Senator Linda Collins Smith, because what we had coming down the pike through our Common Core, they were removing in our state the true American history concerning our wars all the way back up into the Vietnam War. They were removing that out. They were not going to teach it. And Jennifer, working with Senator Linda Collins Smith, put her on it, and she got that changed. She fought, and she made sure that this history is to be taught in our public schools. But that's what we're fighting. And the fight's not going to end. They're going to keep coming at us. They're going to keep coming at us, and we have to be vigilant. We have to stay alert. We have to be awake and stay on top of these things.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very excited about, the Patriots of Act 746 now forming into the Arkansas Liberty Coalition under a 501c4 nonprofit organization. We're going to be able to step up. We're going to be able to do more. And we've got a lot of good things coming down the pike, and man, I'm just excited about it.
And I know, I can definitely sense that, really just from the community as a whole.
Absolutely.
You talk about being vigilant. I've talked to a few people, and the impression that I kind of get at this point, if you look at the way in Arkansas.
Yes.
Possession of a weapon, has been decriminalized to such an extent.
Right.
It would almost be a good thing in the next session to not have any gun laws passed. You know what I mean? It's almost like don't do anything.
Just leave it alone. Oh my goodness! But I want you to think about all of these gun laws. There is no way in a short interview such as we are having that we could go through all of these laws with a fine-tooth comb. This would take days for me to just try to go through it and try to understand it, and making phone calls to people who are attorneys to help me understand language. Now, think about possible red flag legislation being thrown in on top of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my goodness, you talk about a disaster, a fiasco. This would be horrible. And, I can't go into any detail at this point, but I had an incident in the middle of November where if red flag legislation was in effect, I could have been in major trouble.
Really?
And absolutely. And there may be a time in the future where I can discuss this, but at the time I cannot.
Okay.
But this is something that, it's been a very scary situation for me. Know that within my heart, I know 100% that I was in the right, doing what I could to protect a loved one, but it turned south on me. And if red flag legislation was in effect, I would have had the authorities at my home confiscating my weapons.
What about and that is that's just ridiculous. So what about military veterans, combat veterans with PTSD? I think some of these red flag laws are gonna ensnare our veterans.
They will ensnare our veterans. They're going to be targeted, and when we have men and women who come back from foreign soil, who have been in battle, been in and around battle, and that changes the psyche. It has to. There's no doubt whatsoever when they come back that they're startled by these things.
Yeah.
And so we need a very, very, very good system in implementing these great men and women back into society when they leave the armed forces, and to help them cope. And I believe we have dropped the ball big time by just throwing our veterans out to the wolves to cope with things on their own.
Oh, absolutely.
When we should be helping them to cope and to deal with civilian lifestyle once again after they have been through such trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that's been through major trauma needs help to overcome it. I don't care who you are, how strong you think you are. If you've been through trauma, the Bible tells us that a wise man will listen to the counsel of a friend. All of us need counseling.
Mm-hmm.
We need counsel from time to time, whether it be from a friend, whether it be from a professional. We all need counsel. Why are we throwing our veterans out to the wolves and not giving them what they need?
Dan Borum, I really couldn't agree with you more, and I really appreciate you being on the program today with the Patriots Fact 746. And we'll do this again soon. And, this discussion on the amount of laws we have on the books, it would be great if they got rid of some of these.
Yes.
That would be fantastic, but something tells me they're just going to keep adding to it. Dan,
Right.
I'll give you the last word, sir, and then we got to go.
What I would like to do is challenge everyone out there who is listening, go to ArcLeg and look at 573-101 all the way through 573-133. Look at the concealed carry laws. Look at the enhanced carry laws. Look at all of the different laws out there concerning guns or possessing a weapon, and then come out and see if you can even come close to understanding and see what kind of situation that we're really in right now. So, Paul, thank you very much, and you all have a blessed day.
All righty, you too. Dan Borm, everybody. You can go to Facebook.com, search for Patriots Vac 746, and ask to become a member of that group and join the online sensation today. We'll be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Ravindran, who was a Medicaid guru, was an expert in Medicaid rules. I mean, appointed by the governor to the Legislative Criminal Justice Oversight Task Force in April of 2015. We're talking, we just don't know at this point how much in terms of this illegal exaction suit that we're talking, but what we do know is between 2011 and 2016, Preferred Healthcare received $52 million in Arkansas Medicaid funds. Certainly, a lot of that was probably not misapplied or illegally spent, but we just don't know the answer to that yet.
Okay.
But with the, from March 1, 2014 until June of 2018, we know that Preferred Family and
determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, we're back. We are back. Welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us, kind of in the home stretch of the first hour of the program today. Might as well talk about this. This is a huge story. This is an absolute huge story here. The Arkansas Democrat Gazette, you've got Eric Besson and Lisa Hammersley. I also think you've got some contributions from the Northwest Arkansas Gazette's Doug Thompson in this piece. Nonprofit cashed in using Arkansas program for mental services. Now, of course, we know about Preferred Family Health Care. We know about how they've been bribing legislators, and we know how these, legislators, former, current, lobbyists as well, have gone to jail, have pled guilty, have been found guilty, whatever. They have, they've gone to jail. But people are still looking into this even more. There appears to be more shoes to drop. You have executives of Preferred Family Healthcare going down. You have other executives, former executives of Preferred Family Healthcare being investigated. They're at the center of the federal government probing this corruption and everything that they were doing. Well, there's a new angle to this, and I don't know if I can get to it all today, but there is this RSPMI program, okay? RSPMI stands for Rehabilitative Services for Persons with Mental Illness. It's a program here in the state of Arkansas, and they were using, Preferred Family Health Care. The state was paying Preferred Family Health Care to take care of people who are in the Rehabilitative Services for Persons with Mental Illness program. Okay? The interesting thing was that the reimbursement rates were fantastic, and there was limited competition because of a moratorium on other entities being able to compete for the state's business. That's what this and when you read this report by the Gazette, I mean, you really see how the deck was stacked. Not only for the Preferred Family Health Care, but also kind of against the patients. From what I can tell. So back in 2008. Oh, and by the way, there's also a perverse incentive to where, the more people you see, the more people that you claim to serve, obviously the more money you get. And we've seen this kind of fraud before, by the way, with like a Medicaid meal program where you give away so many lunches and then you get reimbursed by the state because you're doing charitable work, and then you have these people who've gone to jail because they've lied and about how many meals they were actually serving kids, and they're inflating those because the more meals that go out, the more money they get, and that sort of thing. And people have gone to jail for that. So the state paid firms like Preferred Family based on the number of treatments they provided rather than the quality or necessity of care. And I have to stop right there. I was recently having a conversation with a doctor about the speed with which examinations take place. Now, not necessarily specific to Preferred Family Health Care, just generally, right? There is kind of two schools of thought, right? Quality time with the doctor versus, the shorter time you spend with a doctor, the more money that practice is going to make. And I thought to myself, wow, government being in between, when it comes to Medicaid, government being in between you and your doctor essentially has taken the buying power away from the consumer. Because if you didn't have Medicaid and you had a situation where you were going to the doctor and the doctor spends, doesn't make you feel like that you're cared for or that you're being listened to because you've got a specific dollar amount in a Medicaid reimbursement tied to you, there was always the possibility as a patient you can be like, I'm not paying you. You're not a good doctor. I don't appreciate your bedside manner, and all of this other stuff that could come into play. That is now gone now. That is now out the window. It's like the equivalent of going off the gold standard. Back in the day, if we didn't like the monetary policy or what the government was doing, we could take our money to a bank and we could get gold for it to show as a protest, to show the government, we don't like what you're doing that's causing the value of the dollar to fluctuate, so I'll just rather take my gold. Well, that's essentially what we've done to our healthcare industry, isn't it? You've got insurance companies between you and your doctor, or you've got the government between you and your doctor, or you have insurance companies and the government between you and your doctor, and you're not a consumer of the product. You have no buying power because you have these entities that get paid regardless of the quality of care because it's all about like an assembly line factory. How many units can you put together in a set amount of time? And that also provides really an incentive that I think goes against the oath that doctors take in a lot of ways. Now, listen, I'm not a doctor, but I'm just saying I think about these things because I want health care to be better. And I think in the market's the best place to do that. But, right now we don't even know the actual price of a heart surgery. So this basically bled over into this specific program here in Arkansas. And then apparently there was a moratorium on allowing new companies to compete for the state's Medicaid business. It was supposed to last 1 year, and it lasted for 10. I want you to think about that. For 10 years, there was no competition. There was lobbyists. There was special interests making sure the moratorium stayed in place to where basically only one company, Preferred Family Healthcare, was getting all this business. And at the center of it all, Preferred Family Healthcare and Milton Rusty Russell Cranford and a bunch of other people who've pled guilty.